So this is going to be sort of a getting started guide on the literature review, which is due November 11th. You can find the assignment directions in both Module 3 as well as the POP folder inside weekly lessons. We're going to walk through what this thing is and how to do it. Okay, so just to get started, I want to just talk a bit about the point of the research review. Researchers always do a literature review in some form when they're writing articles. And there's three reasons to do it. One is to build background knowledge, to like really know your stuff about your topic, your pop. Another is just simply to sort of figure out um, sort of if you're thinking about a rationale for why further research or further exploration is needed, right? You're going to find some things out, and you're also going to see some limitations or some unknowns, and that's one of the things the literature review exposes. And then finally, a literature review, if you're looking at things like trying to determine what the best approach to teaching is, or like that, you're going to get ideas in it by doing a literature review, by looking at other research to say how to do a certain teaching practice or to understand the different perspectives on teaching something. So again, I'm going to start with talking about the product, what you're going to produce, and then I'm going to talk a bit about the process. Now, this literature review thing is going to come in two forms, right? You're going to be doing a assignment, this literature review assignment for November 11th, and then you're going to take the work you do on the literature review and you're going to integrate it into your final topic, whether it's the research review or the journal article. That means you're going to start with a draft of it, and then what actually appears will be similar but not quite the same thing, and I'm going to explain why. So a literature review does a couple things. One is it summarizes like what are the main ideas across pieces of research, right? So you're going to identify a topic, right? And you've got this question, and you're going to search it, look at multiple articles, multiple books, what have you, and you're going to sort of identify what are some themes or patterns that come out, right? And then once you identify those patterns, you're going to organize your review of the literature around those patterns. The reason you do this is you're not going to do an annotated bibliography. Here's one source, here's another source. In fact, you're going to actually integrate them so that the sources are talking to one another, and so that you can make conclusions, you can pull out trends and patterns, etc. And then finally, another reason, I'm going to say, particularly for those people doing the journal article format, is a literature review can also provide a rationale argument for a thesis, a research question, or data collection. You could argue why it's important to study something. You could argue for a particular way of teaching something, etc., by sort of arranging and organizing the research around that topic. So again, we're really going to be focusing on this summary piece. That's going to be critical to putting together the work. So I wanted to show you a couple examples about what the work looks like, a literature review looks like in both a research review and a journal article. This is an example from an author named Nystrom, and if you go into the POP folder, you can find it in there. And one of the things I wanted to point out is we talked about there's a summary, there's an identification of key ideas and patterns across the literature. And then there might also be a rationale in there as well. So if you look at this, if you pause and look at this, you'll see there's like kind of like a topic sentence, right? And then the subsequent sentences back it up by citing multiple different sources. So you can see there's a sort of a main idea, and that is most people know that discussion is an important part of literacy instruction, but practices are inconsistent and erratic, right? That's in the first sentence, right? And then you see multiple points here about how much people know and what they're actually doing in the practice by citing the research, right? So a research review is going to really be sort of an elaborate multi-paragraph response in which you're organizing the literature like this, just like that. A journal article, and this is from the McEwen article you read or will be reading for, what is that, October 20th. You can see here, you see research cited across the board, but I just wanted to give you an example of the way in which the researchers have organized the findings around what they're going to actually test out. So if you remember, there's a strategy focus and a content focus, and they do their literature review around strategy and then content, right? So they're actually saying, we're going to test these things out. Here's what we know specifically around these things and how it's going to inform our research design. So, having said that, I want you to take a look at these two formats here because this is going to sort of lay out what the difference is. A research review, the difference primarily here for each format is if you're doing the research review, you're really going into this inductively. What I mean is you're not going in with a thesis or a theory about what's right or what is important. You're going in to find out answers to that. You don't know. You're doing research in order to make decisions rather than using your own decisions or your own practice as the research. So that means that in an inductive way is you're going to generate conclusions from uh, examining, observing, skimming ideas from the research, right? The journal article is going to be more deductive. And by that I mean is you're going to have an idea going in. You're going to have this idea about teaching fluency in a particular way. You're going to have an idea around teaching critical literacy in a certain way. And you're going to look for those ideas in your research. And you're going to use them to either like confirm or you're going to use them to like refine. You might take ideas and adapt things you see, but you're going to sort of stick to your hypothesis about what you think is right. So, again, if you look at this thing here, is a research review is going to be more generally focused on potential features of behavior, right? You're going to cast a wider net, in part because you're learning about it. Whereas a journal article is going to cast a much more specific focus because you have a very specific idea about what you want to test out. And so the difference is going to be the number of sources you're expected to use in each piece. The research review, for the literature review, you're going to be required to use 5 sources and 8 in total for the pop essay assignment. I'm going to say at least, that's the minimum. Now, the journal article requires less literature reviewing and more doing research in the classroom, hence why you're going to need at least 4 sources for the literature review and 6 in total for the pop essay assignment. Now, here's a list of sources. It's inside the assignment that you can download. And I want to point out, I haven't already, that I've created separate assignment docs for the literature review, for the research review, and the literature review for the journal article. But here are some examples of research journals that I think are going to be most relevant to you and are rigorous enough to meet the standards of this course. Those include things like the Reading Teacher, the Journal of Adolescent and Adult Literacy, Reading Research Quarterly, Elementary School Journal is a really strong one, and you can see some other examples. There's more to this list than that's on here. Check with me if you're not sure. What isn't allowed, though, are what we would call rigorously researched pieces. Those include things like blogs or personal sites, curriculum materials, newsletters. Articles on classroom strategies refer to things like Language Arts or English Journal magazine, where typically it's a teacher or other kind of practitioner writing about particular classroom practices, reflecting on it. It tends to be first person and personal and not really research oriented. You can throw something my way, but I would prefer you find stuff that is kind of the intense sort of scholarly stuff we're reading. I want to talk now about the process for doing this work. Okay, there's 6 steps. I'm going to walk through each of them. You can take a look at them right here. We're going to go through each one individually, but I also want to walk through them with an example one. So I've just created an example walkthrough problem of practice, and that is, what is the best practice for teaching high school students how to incorporate counter arguments into their essays? And if you don't know what I mean by counter argument, I've included the grade 7 writing standard, which says introduce claims, acknowledge alternative or opposing claims, i.e. the counter argument, and organize the reasons and evidence logically. And so from grade 7 through grade 12 in the Common Core, you're expected, students are expected to address counter arguments. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your POP and you're going to ask yourself, what are the questions that you would need to answer in order to answer your POP, right? So what is everything you need to know, in other words, in order for you to sort of fully and meaningfully answer your research question? Your research question is going to be like big, and then you can imagine there's going to be specific elements to it. Some of them are going to be about like the knowledge behind like what is fluency, and others might be about around practices around like how do you teach fluency, right? I want you to just list all the questions, and then I want you to eliminate those questions you do not need to review research in order to answer. By that, I mean you know already, or you could easily get it, that you don't actually have to go do a search for. And then from there, I just prioritize what do you think are the most important questions to answering your POP. You don't have to answer every single question in the lit review. Pick the ones that you think are most important. So let me give you an example on this idea about counter argument. You can see the first two I crossed out. What is a counter argument? We can go get that really easily by looking at Wikipedia, looking at probably a book you've got. You can pull off the shelf. We don't really need to do research on it. What does the Common Core say about the counter argument? Well, we can just look at the Common Core standard. You don't need to go and search for that. So we want things that are actually going to, like we need to do some searching on. So I bolded to what existing guidance is there for high school teachers on teaching the counter argument? In other words, what's out there, right, about the actual teaching practice? And then the other piece is kids have difficulty with argument, right? So what challenges or impediments are commonly faced by students when writing formal academic arguments? Because if students didn't have impediments, they'd be writing counter arguments already. So it's important to know what it is they know or can or cannot do. So the next piece after this is going to be to list those search terms that you think would yield research on the sub-questions. And I would just tell you, just come up with the terms that you think would be best and try to come up with some strings, some Boolean search terms to try out. So you can see here I paired counter argument in high school, argument teaching strategies. All right, I want you to conduct an initial search, and the place to go, guys, is Google Scholar, okay? When you go to Google Scholar, I'm going to show you in 1 second. It's so beautiful. You can just run a search, and it'll pull up all of the research articles, some of which they'll have things you can download, and then you can use that as a way to easily find what you're looking for. If they don't have the available PDF, I would just get the title and citation, and I'd go to the Roosevelt database, which I'm going to show you in 1 second. So let me just show you what this looks like. Okay, so imagine I'm searching for counter argument in teaching, right? I'm going to put this in Google Scholar, again, scholar.google. Here we are. We've got a bunch of examples. We got 23,000 examples, right? And you can see as I scroll down, they may not be all that great. The first thing that I see here, I see stuff about science, etc. So what I may want to do is I just may want to make it more recent, right? So I'm going to click since 2012, right? And again, I'm going to take a look. What do we have here that's useful? And one of the first things I see here that might be helpful is this teaching and learning argumentation and a dialogic approach. Okay, so it sounds like this is around sociocultural student conversations. But I see that there's no article. You see how it's a PDF here? There's no there. So I can take this, I copy it, right? And I can go to Roosevelt's library, and I can then do a search. Here I can find the journal, and then I can do a search. You see I already got Reading Research Quarterly in here. Okay. Now, let's do this. So you found some pieces, right? Your next step is really going to be to skim what you find. Don't decide you're going to do a text until you've actually taken a look at it. So the first thing I'd tell you to do is look at the abstract, the overview. That's this italicized thing right here, right? And that's going to be just absolutely critical because it's going to give you an overview of what you're looking at. But sometimes it might not tell you everything, or it might intrigue you. So you might then want to search down, right? This piece is around epistemologies, i.e. like people's knowledge, right? So it may not be about counter argument in the way I want. So I might need to do something like run a search where I look for the word counter argument, right? And then see if it comes up. And then I also might want to search the beginning and the end to see what the main ideas are. Make sense? So what I'm telling you to do is decide whether you want to toss something, you want to search something, you want to scan it, i.e. just like review it really quickly, or you want to save it. If you're not clear or certain, try skimming the intro and the discussion sections. This discussion is usually the second to last piece, just to see what the main ideas are, so you see if it's relevant. So once you've done that in a number of pieces, do this. Ask yourself these questions. You can pause here and ask them. Like, are you finding the right things? Are they addressing your sub-questions? Does that mean you need to change your sub-questions, right? Are your search terms yielding results? And if not, think about changing them. But the other thing you can do that's really helpful is look at the citations, the references, works cited at the end of the articles, and ask yourself, like, what's in here that's intriguing that you want to follow up on? Then go search for it in Roosevelt's database right here, right? You can, again, search the database. You can run searches yourself. That will actually help you find those specific pieces, right? Finally, we're going to get to the organization of the report. I want you to take notes on the key ideas, right? And then when you've finished, organize around your questions and then write the report around your questions.